Welcome you all to the Creator TechConnect series. This is the first series of this year. And for people who are joining new, I would like to give a small introduction about the Creators TechConnect series. The Creators TechConnect series is a monthly free webinar that we conduct where we concentrate mainly on the technical nuances that are there in the Creator platform. So we delve deep into the technical nuances as well as give you demonstrations on the topics that we take. Let me introduce myself. I am Sai Kumar Muralidharan. I will be the speaker for today. I am part of the technical training team in Zoho Creator. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping rules to be followed. All attendees will be on mute. Please post your questions in the questions tab towards your left. A recording of this session will be sent to all the attendees. You need not worry at all. You can go back again and revisit the session as well. And please participate in the polls and surveys as well whenever they are conducted. Thank you so much for your participation. Now let's get started. In today's session, we have taken the topic as custom widgets and extension concepts. Since this is a technical session, we have split this topic into three parts so that we can delve deep into the technical nuances of custom widgets and the extension concepts. So let me introduce you to the three-part series that we have planned. First up, we have the custom widgets and extension concepts, where we will delve deep into the JS APIs, the process that needs to be followed to develop a widget, and so on. In the next session, which will happen on February, we have the Zoho Marketplace widget extensions, where we will talk to you about the widget extensions inside Zoho Marketplace, and we will also introduce you to the extensions and how the marketplace extensions work from the user end as well as from the developers end. So that would be covered in the February's session. And in the March session, which should be the third part of the technical series, we would be delving deep into the widget extension development. So we will concentrate mainly on the development of the widget and how we can post that into the marketplace. So this is the technical series that we have planned with three different parts. I hope you are all excited as I am. Let's get started with today's topic. So let's see what is in store for us today. First up, we have widget in Zoho Creator, where I will be giving you an introduction about the widgets. And post that, I will explain to you about the process that is involved in creating the widgets. And then we will talk about JS API and its capabilities, how you can connect with the application that you are developing and the widget that you have developed externally, right? And also we will be giving you a small demonstration on different scope of action and how you can do this as well. At the end, we will be showing you different key pointers that are very important to note while working with JS APIs and widgets. Now let's get started with widgets in Zoho Creator. Widgets in Zoho Creator are used to embed different components to perform functions as well as create more front-end capabilities as well. So this depends upon different stakeholder requirements, wherein you can create widgets as a front end and create a more enhanced experience to the user. Now that we know what are widgets, we'll discuss more on the process of creating the widgets. My co-trainer would be sharing a link of a session that we conducted last year, which has a detailed description and the process of how to create a widget from start. Right? You can go through the session that we had conducted last year, which will have the step-by-step process. Now, I will give you a small gist of the process so that you can have a heads up on the process as well. First up, we have to download the CLI tool. Once you download the CLI tool, you have to create a project. So once you create a project, you need to develop the widget by using HTML, CSS, Java. JavaScript as it, and then you need to test and pack it. Once you test and pack it, it will have a zip file. You can upload the zip file into Creator, and this is where you will be able to use the widget inside the application. So this is the whole process, and this was covered in the session that we conducted last year. Now, in this session, we'll be concentrating mainly on the development part of the widget. How we can develop by using HTML, CSS, and JS. How you can connect with JS APIs, and what are the capabilities of JS APIs. So this is the main crux of this session. Now, you all know we develop applications inside the Creator platform, right? So inside which you develop apps. So any data that you store inside the application would be stored inside Creator, right? So if you have to develop a widget, right, which is an external component, you have HTML for developing the framework, and you also have CSS where it can be used to beautify the framework that already exists by creating the HTML, right? At the end, we also have JS, which is JavaScript, which can be used to create functions and create more logic into the framework that we have created. Now, this is the external framework, which is the culmination, which is the widgets, right? So now we need to communicate between widgets and Creator. How do we do that? We have JS SDK, which is a development toolkit from Zoho, wherein you can communicate with widgets and the Creator, right? So what is JS SDK? JS SDK is a library which just offers ways to create JavaScript widgets that can be integrated into the Zoho Creator applications. This is also possible by the JS APIs, where you can use to push and pull data into the application and from the application by using widgets. Now, let's see what is the scope of JS APIs, right? So you can add record from the widget into the application. You can also update records from the widget into the reports. You can also get records. You can fetch records from the application into the widget, where you can get also specific records by ID. You can also have the record count got as well from the application into the widget. You also have an option to delete records, where with this JS APIs, you can delete records from the widget inside the application, and you also can upload files as well. So these are all the actions or the scope of JS APIs that are available with the widgets. Now, to develop the widget inside the coding, you will be coding in, let's say, Visual Studio, right? First, you need to write the script tag, which is the CDN URL. So with the CDN URL, you can go ahead and access the library, right? So this has all the coding that is necessary for us to access the JS APIs and the library. And for us to initialize it, right, we need the SDK code, right? For that, we have a syntax called as zoho.creator.initialize, and then function, and then the code that you write will go inside the block over here. So we'll be discussing all this in the demonstration as well. I'll be showing you how we'll be using this. Now let's start with our scope, right? So let's start with add record, right? To add a record, you need to first have the configuration. So with the configuration, you need to add the app name as in the app URL. I'll be showing you the demo where you can get the app URL. You also need to enter the form name, which is the form link name. So I'll also show you where you can get the form link name. At the end, you need to follow the data format that is there in the documentation. And at the end, you have the syntax, which is zoho.creator.api.add records config.then function with the response. You need not worry. Our documentation that our co-trainers would be sharing now will have a detailed description of the whole process. You can go ahead and look into the documentation and get to know the whole process of developing the widget with the URL and also the scopes as well inside, which will have the configuration API call with examples inside. You can also update records as well, where you can configure the app name. Again, it is the app URL, then the report report link name, and then at the end you will have to have the ID, right? So because when you have to update a record which is already entered in Creator, as you all know, we have to have a unique ID, right? So that is the record ID in Creator. In Creator, any record that has been entered will have a record ID which is unique to that record alone. So we need to fetch the record IDs, and then at the end you will have the form data. With that, we have the API syntax, which is zoho.creator.api.update record. Instead of add record, we use update record, and rest are the same, which is config.then function with a response, which is the callback block. Now let's get started with a demonstration. Now let me get into the application. Here in the application, I have built a form with name, phone number, and email address. So this is a participant details form inside an event application. And in the form, I have 3 fields, which is name, phone number, and email address. And with that, I have a report where data is being entered, right? And you can view the data over here. I've created a page, and inside the page, I have 2 widgets that I have created, right? One is the form to fill, where if I fill the form and click on submit, I want the data to be pushed from the form inside the application, right? And if I want to update a record, I want to enter the details over here with the record ID, and details that are pertaining to that record ID should be updated from the widget into the applications report, right? So this is how we will be developing the widget from the scratch, wherein let's see how we can go ahead and do this. Now, as I told you all, the first step is to download the CLI tool, create a project. Once you create a project, you have a folder that has been created, right? So I'll get into the folder. So as soon as I create a project, I have a folder that has been created called as add record. So the project that I had created is add record. Over here, I have the add record folder that has been created. Inside the add record folder, I have app folder, dist folder, the server folder, and other files as well. So inside the app folder, I have the widget folder available, right? I have translation and I have the widget. So this is the main index folder from which we will be able to push the widget into the application, right? So I'll right click on it. I'll open with Visual Studio. And here, first, let me clear this. And now, let me explain to you all in detail what is the script that I have already written, right? So first up, I have created a form over here, right? So with the form, I have created different labels called as first name, last name, and then I have the email address as a label or a field that I've created, and I have the phone number, right? At the end, I have a button that I have created. So I've created a button and I've named it as submit, right? I'll just zoom in as well. I've created as submit over. So once they click on submit, right? So any user clicks on submit, I want an function to run, which is the API function that I have named it as, right? In the middle, we have the CSS script that we have done, where we have beautified the script by using width, padding, margins, displays, border, which gives out a more formatted form as well. And over here, we first need to enter the URL. Right? So the URL is the script src, wherein I have the CDN URL that I have copied and pasted. So this is available in the form. You can go ahead into Creator. So over here in this documentation, you have the CDN URL. You can go ahead and use the CDN URL, copy, and you can paste it over here, right? And you have to write the function, right? So I called upon the function over here as API function that I have named underneath inside the button. So as soon as the button has been clicked, this function runs, right? So you can't just write the function. As I told you before, we need to initialize the SDK, right? For us to initialize the SDK, we have to write the script, which is zoho.creator.initialize dot, then you have the function and you have the data inside which I have written the values inside a variable, right? So I have called upon first name, last name, email address, and number, and I have named it as document dot get element by ID, and I have got the value as well over here, right? Now, the first step to have the configuration, right, as I had explained to you in the presentation, we need to first enter the form data, right? So we have form data is equal to, I open brackets. For us to enter the form data, we need to follow a set script pattern, which is available in the same documentation. Over here, we have the form data is equal to data is to name. So this format is being followed over here because this is a composite field where you have the first name and last name, which are two different fields inside a single field. This is called as a component field, right? Inside the composite field, you have the first name and last name. And you also have other fields where you need to follow the same syntax for us to access the fields inside the application. So if I have to pull data or push data, this is how the format data should be followed, right? So now I'll type data is to, I'll open brackets again and I'll type name is to, I'll open brackets and I'll have the first underscore name is to, here I'll use the first name, which is the variable that we had created in the beginning, right? Over here, right? So this is the variable that we had created with the data. I'm just calling upon the first name over here and I'm entering the last name underscore name is to, now I have the last name, right? I'll use the comma over here since we will be entering more data. I'll have the email field is to, here I'll use the email, right? And I'll use the phone number field, which is phone underscore number. I'll add a comma over here is to, I'll use the variable number that I had created over here, right? So now with this, we have entered the form data, right? So now once you have added the form data by attaching it with the variable that we had created and the name, first name, last name, and the phone number, now let's add the configuration. So inside the configuration, we need to add the app name, right? So we have the app name is 2. So inside the app name, we have to enter the name of the app's URL, right? So I'll get into the application. Inside the application, in the top right corner, I need to edit the application. I'll get into the solutions, and inside I have 3 dots over here, right? I'll click on this 3 dots, and here I have an option called as summary, right? I'll click on this summary over here, and towards your right, if you see, you have a URL, right? So I'll click on this URL over here, and this is the app URL that needs to be used in the app name. So it's not the name as such, it is the URL. So I'll copy paste the app name as the URL. Now I need to enter the form name. For this, I'll get into the application. I'll edit the application in the top right corner, and I'll open the form builder after I hover the mouse pointer in the middle. In the top right corner, I have 3 dots. I'll click on the 3 dots, click on rename, and this is the form link name that I'd be using. I'll copy this, click on done, and I'll paste it over here. Use a comma, and now I'll enter the data, which is the form data that we had created, right? So I'll use form data, right? So we have returned the configuration wherein we have add the app name, form name, and data over here. So this can be seen in the documentation as well, where we have the syntax as well as the example over here. So you can go through this and use it in the script as well for your reference. And now let's use the API call, which is Zoho Creator API. Now I have to add record. Then I'll use config dot then I'll have the function response. I'll open brackets and I'll write if the response.code is equal to 3000. I am giving out a response, right? So console.log, I'm giving out a response as record added successfully. So now once you go ahead, after the record has been added successfully into the console, you'll be able to see the record added successfully message over there. And we have written the script for the form to be updated, right? But the data will still be existing in the form. So that now we'll have to write a code to reset the form altogether. So I'll have variable form reset is equal to document dot get element by ID My form is the name of the form that I had created, dot reset, and I closed it with the semicolon, right? So now I'll also close the bracket that had opened with the function, right? So now we have cleared with the form data and then config, and then we have called upon the API as well, right? So now I'll save this. After I save this, right, I need to go back to the terminal and I need to test and pack it. So I'll get into the terminal. I'll call upon the file that I am working on inside the directory as add underscore record. Now I'll validate it. I like Z validate, and now I'll type Z sudo Z pack. So this would ask my password. I'll give out the password. So once I pack this, right, so I'll be able to go ahead and install the widget inside the application. Now, once I've done it, I'll get into the application, and in the settings option in the top, click on it. Under developer tools, I have an option called as widgets over here, right? I'll click on widgets, and I'll be able to add different widgets over here, right? So I'll click on new widget. I'll name it as add record. And here I have two options. One is internal hosting, another one is external hosting. So internal hosting is where you can host it with the Zoho server, where you can use HTML, JS, and CSS to build your widget and connect it. If you are using external servers, right, where you have developed the widget with your own language with the external servers, you can go ahead and use that as well and enter the URL over here. My co-trainers would be sharing the documentation about the internal hosting and external hosting and what is the process that needs to be followed for both. I will click on internal now and I'll click on browse. Here we have the file of add record, right? Inside the add record folder, I have the dist folder inside which I have the already zipped file. So as soon as I test and pack it, I have a zip file that gets stored. I'll click on it and I'll open it and I'll name it as widget.html. This index file is something which is very important because this index file is how the system knows that you are connecting with the widget, right? So whatever name that you give, wherever the location that the file is must be mentioned over here. The widget.html should always be inside the app folder that's been created. I'll click on create. So here at the end, if you see, we have added the add record over here, right? So I'll get into design. I'll get into the page. I'll open the page builder in the middle. Now I have three widgets that we have already added and I have shown to you, right? So I'll click on widgets now, and this will show us when I click on custom, the add record that we just now added, right? So this is the add record that we just now added as the third one. I'll click and drag it over here, right? So this is the last one. I'll click on done. I'll access this application. So this is the form to fill widget that we had created, right? So over here, now let me fill a name. So I have Raman Chandran, and I have the email address as rc@zohomail.com, and I have the phone number that I am entering, right? So now once I enter this, I click on submit, and now from the widget into the report section, we go over here. If you see, we have the data that we just entered over here in the application, right? So we enter the data inside the page, inside the widget, and from here, right, from here the data was moved into the report, or it was, we are able to view it in the report inside the application. Now we have pushed data into the application, right? So now let's see how we can update the data. For that as well, I have created another project, and as you all know, when you create a project, you have a separate folder that has been created, right? So when I access the folder, I go ahead, and here, when I access the folder over here, I have the update record folder. I click on it. It will also have the same app folder, right? I'll click on the app folder, and inside the app folder, I have the widget.html. I'll right click on it. I'll open with Visual Studio over here. So this will open the update record folder over here, which will have the same widget that we are building, where over here we have the form ID as my form, right? And then we have the first name, last name, email address, and the phone number as different fields over which we can enter data. And at the end, I have a function that I have called upon when I click on the submit button, right? I want the report to be updated when I click on the submit button. So for that, let me go ahead and delete this. Now, for that, we'll have to enter the form data first, right? For us to enter form data, you can go ahead and follow the same form data structure over here, since we are going to update the same structure, right? So we are going to update the same name, email address, and the phone number. So I'll copy this. I'll paste it over here, right? So once we have followed the same, I need to configure it, right? So for me to configure, I'll use the same configure block. So when we talk about the configuration block, right, I don't need the form name over here, right? I can't edit with the form. I can only edit with the report, right? So instead of form, I'll type report name, and I need to get the report link name over here. For that, I'll get into the application. I'll edit this application in the top right corner, and I'll open report properties, and in the top right corner I have a rename option, right? I click on the rename, and this will give me the report link name. I'll copy this and I'll paste it over here, right? And now I need to have the ID as well, right? So I'll type ID is equal to, here I need to have the record ID, right? For that, I need to use the record ID that we have created over here in the variable, which is record ID. So I'll use record underscore ID. I'll use the comma, right? For ID, I have the record underscore ID. So this configuration block will also change. You can go ahead into the documentation, and if you see, the configuration block is given over here for add records. So the same configuration block will be given for the update record as well. So you can follow this with the step-by-step process as well. And now, once this is done, I'll have to type the API call, right? So I'll use Zoho.Creator.API Now I need to update the record. So I'll type update record. Now I'll use config dot, then I'll open the function and then response. Now I'll open brackets and I'll give out a response saying if the response dot code is equal to 3000, I want the console.log to be written as record updated successfully, right? I'll use the semicolon, and now I'll have to reset the form, right? For that, I'll be using the same code over here where I'll be resetting the form. I'll copy and paste it over here. Now I'll have to close this and use the semicolon, right? So now we have developed the same widget where I have just changed one thing. I have added instead of a form name, a report name, since we are going to connect with the report, right? And we also have the record ID, which is also very important if I have to edit a record inside the report. And I have called upon the API call, which is zoho.creator.api.update records, right? So now once I save this, I'll access the console log. Let me close this and let me open fresh. And here I'll open the file, which is update underscore record. And now I'll have the validation done. Zip validate sudo zip pack. It would ask my password, so I'll give out a password. So now once this is done, I can go ahead and install or put it inside the application, right? So I'll get into the application. I'll close this. I'll click on done in the top right corner. I'll get into the settings, and inside the developer tools we have widgets, right? I'll get into widgets, and over here we already have a widget that we had created called as update record widget, right? Instead of creating a new widget, I can go ahead and update the file over here as well. I'll click on browse. I'll click on update records. Inside the disk, I have the update record file. I'll click on open and I'll update it. So this is another way wherein if I have to edit the already existing widget, I can go ahead and edit the script and test packet and again upload the widget over here as well. So I'll click on update. I'll access the application. Since we already have the widget, I'll click on page. And this is the form to update a report, the widget that we have just now updated, right? So for that, we need to go ahead and copy a record ID. Now, once we copy the record ID, I'll enter the record ID over here and I'll enter the first name. So let's try changing the first name as Sai Kumar sk@gmail.com, and I'll give out a number and I'll click on submit. Now I'll get into the reports, and over here if you see, the value that was existing has changed to the value that we just now entered, right? So by using the widget, we were able to edit an already existing record inside the application. Now let me get back to the presentation. Now that we have seen add and update of records, let's see how to get specific records by ID. So this is where we are going to fetch a record from the application into the widget, and let's see how we can do that. For that, we need to follow the config app name, which is the name URL, and then you have the report name, which is the report link name, and we have the record IDs. And at the end, we have the syntax zoho.creator.api. Then we are using the scope, which is get record by ID. Then we have the same config dot then function, inside which we have the response. Now, again, when we are going to create a project to get the record, again, a folder is been created, right? So once you click on the app folder inside which the widget.html folder is there, you right click on it, and this is the script that we have written inside the get record by ID project. So we have named the form as form to fetch record by ID, and inside which I have the record ID as a field that we have created. And then we have a button called as submit button. On click of the submit button, I want get records by ID function be run. At the end, I also have a empty table that I have created. I'm using the empty table to fetch data and store the data inside the table. In the middle, I have used CSS to beautify the form. And at the start, I have used the same script SRC, wherein I have the URL. Inside the URL is the widget SDK, and we also have the zoho.creator.initialize.then function, which is the initializing SDK block. Now, under that, we have the record ID, which is equal to document.getElement by ID. I have used this syntax to get the value inside the variable record underscore ID. Then I have used again the same configuration, app name, report name, and the record ID. And I've used the API call as zoho.creator.api.getRecordById, where I have used the configuration and the response, inside which I have created a variable. Inside the variable, I am using response.data, and I am populating the table over here. What am I populating it with? I am populating it with the email and the name, or the first name of the value that we have entered, right? By the API call that we are making, we'll be able to fetch the data, and with the record ID, we'll be able to fetch the record ID from the data by the record ID and get it into the widget. Now, once you test and pack this widget, right? Let me get into the application, get into page. So this is how the form to fetch record by ID widget will look like, right? So first up, we need to get into the form, right? So I'll get into the form. I'll copy the ID of the value that we just now updated. I'll get into page. I'll click on the ID, paste it. I'll click on submit, and this gives me the email and the name of the record ID that we have updated, right? So I can also go ahead into the report, get another record, click on page. Here I can enter the record ID, and here it would fetch the value as well. So any record with the record ID, I can go ahead, fetch the record ID, and I'll be able to get the value from the application inside the widget by using JS API's scope of record, which is the get record by ID. Now, let me get back to the presentation. So, as I told you before, we have certain key pointers that needs to be discussed before you start working with the JS APIs widgets, right? The first one is you can create up to 50 widgets in your Zoho Creator account. And if you have certain pages which are already published and you have widgets in those pages, the JS API will not work in the published pages. So it would only work in the developed when the pages, if it is in the development stage. For internal hosting, the maximum size of the widget zip file, it should not exceed more than 10 MB, and the number of files should not exceed more than 250 inside the zip file, and the maximum size of inside the zip file should not exceed 5 MB as well. And this is also a very important thing to note. As I had explained to you all earlier in the demonstration, we have a app file inside the app folder. Inside the app folder, you have the widget.html file, right? So the widget.html file is the index file. You can change the location of the index file if suppose you create another file and you want to put the widget.html file inside another folder. You have to call upon the syntax folder name / file name .html when you are writing the when you are calling upon the syntax inside the application, which is over here. I'll edit the application inside settings, widgets, new widget over here inside the index file, right? So you need to mention the index file name format as folder name / file name .html. So with this, we have come to the end of our session for today. Now let me introduce you to some more upcoming sessions that would be interesting for you all. The first one is the learning table series. So for people who are new, learning table series is a month-on-month free webinar that we conduct on every first week of every month, where we concentrate mainly on 12-month 12 industries concept, where we take an industry and we develop an application which is pertaining to that industry, and we also give you demonstration and also share the DS file as well of the application that we have developed. So this would also show you all different features that are coming up in the creator platform as well, where we would have used those features into the application. So please go ahead, for people who have not yet joined, go ahead, scan the QR code and join the session. And for people who have already joined the session, please go ahead and share the link to your colleagues or friends so that it would be useful for everyone as well. You can also go ahead and register by using the short URL. Our next topic is Creator for Agriculture, which would take place on February 8th, 4 p.m. IST. The next session after the learning table series is the Creators TechConnect. As you all know, I think you are very eager to attend the part 2 session as well, right? So this is the continuation of the part 1 session that we had seen today. In the second session, we'll again be concentrating mainly on widgets, marketplace. Please, if you have not yet joined, scan the QR code and join the session as well. And if you have already joined, please share the link to your colleagues or friends so that they'll be able to get the knowledge as well. So I'll be having the screen for a few minutes. You can go ahead and scan the QR codes. Our co-trainers would also be sharing links for to both the sessions, so that if you want to copy the link and get registered later, or if you want to share, if that is easier for you, you can go ahead and do that as well. And before we get into the questions, where you can ask your questions in the questions tab, my co-trainers would be sharing a small poll where we would like to get your approval on a click channel that we are trying to start, where we would be giving you updates on the sessions that we are running, so that you need not miss any sessions, right? Instead of sending you mails, it would be easier for us to give you updates in a click channel. So please go ahead, attend the poll, and give your email addresses, so that we can communicate with you on a regular basis about the click channel that we are trying to start. So while you post the questions in the questions tab, we also have training program that we run, where every week we run a training program for the creator platform, where we concentrate on business users and developers as well. So this is a 3-day training program that we conduct, where we have a detailed teachings on the modules that are being covered in the platform. So you can scan this QR code to get the schedules of the sessions that are being conducted. This is a paid session. You can go ahead and see the QR code and get the link, so that it would be useful for you all. If you have any questions which are related to training, you can go ahead and ask at training@zohocreator.com. If you have any questions pertaining to certifications, you can go ahead and mail to us at certification@zohocreator.com. And if you have any doubts with regards to the platform or the app development, you can go ahead and contact support@zohocreator.com. So we thank you all for your participation, and hope to see you all in the next Creator TechConnect series and the next webinar that we conduct. Thank you.